Good morning. How are you? Hang on. Let me just put my coffee down in a way that I don't kick it, because I will definitely kick it. Hello. My studio's right here, and my kitchen is just about 3 meters that way, and my kid's making coffee, and it makes me a little bit nervous because it's a bit embarrassing when you're streaming and performing and your kids are right there. Although he's not a kid anymore, he's 19. But anyway, hi. He's almost gone. He'll be nearly gone soon. He's nearly gone. Might surprise you, actually. I'm actually quite shy and introverted. I kind of gotta amp up, and I gotta build myself up to do these sorts of things. But and also, I mean, like with everything that's going on at the moment, it's so. Where do you even begin? Like, even just a lot of my writing is. A lot of my stuff at the moment is just stream of consciousness that doesn't become a finished piece, because by the time I get to finish it, something else happens. And so it ends up being this endless cycle of writing about where to put my focus and thinking, oh, this is silly and this is out of date. This is and so it's really hard to sort of anchor yourself in time when you're trying to like create something. I mean, even though, again, you know, it's not going to print. It's not like I can't update or fix anything, but you know, it's just like, unless I'm writing full time and it's my full-time job to write, it's really hard to sort of anchor yourself in space and time. And you know, because again, I'm not reading the news, not a journalist, can't talk about law stuff because I don't want to be perceived to be doing legal stuff too much. And so you end up just in a position where you're like, well, what the fuck do I talk about? Start a cooking channel or something, And also it's like, well, so I'm trying, what I thought is, okay, so where can I anchor myself? And around everything that's going on in the United States, but more generally, because we've got an election here, we've got a state election here in election day, I think it's 8th of March, something like that. One of them, 8th or 3rd, I forgot, coming up on in Western Australia. Then we've got a federal election coming up. Then we've also got, obviously, you've got everything that's going down in the United States. And everyone's sort of screaming. Everyone is screaming about democracy, about efficiency, about debt, about these sorts of things. And the government, obviously, these articles that have appeared are the result of a government inquiry. So there's a lot of substance to it. I've read half of it. I haven't read the whole thing. But something came out yesterday that 70% of Australians can't pass a basic civics test. Now, we've known this. That was one of the first things that I learned in this is even before the internet took off, 2002. One of the first things that we learned was that people don't know how our government works. Okay, and you're in the minority if you do. Okay. But the alarming thing that we're seeing is that it's actually going backwards. So it was already bad. So your baseline civics education. So it used to be at least over 50% of students could pass a civics test about sort of the basics of democracy and how democracy works. And that slipped down to less than half now. Now, that's roughly the same in America. Like, we make fun of the literacy rates and how Americans are stupid, and they are very stupid in a different way. Stupid in a way that they don't know what words mean. We at least, agree on reality. At least up until recently, people could agree that there was an established definition for words and what reality is. Now people can just go, no, it isn't, and people believe them, which that's a way more concerning thing than, any kind of higher education in the humanities. Like, that is one aspect of it, which is the long-term campaign against the humanities, an overall lack of civic literacy, an awful lot of opinions. But the numbers don't match up with the opinions. The numbers match up with a lot of opinions that are not informed. Okay. And the thing that's concerned me, and it was kind of an aha moment the other day, right? That article stuck with me because there was a moment where watching everyone talk about a coup. Okay. I'll talk about that in a minute. And I've always been a stickler for precise definitions, okay? Like, we can riff and we can have fun and we make jokes and I can misspeak and all of those things. But when it comes down to it, shared understanding and consensus around what words mean is just how you build meaning, okay? There's nothing more postmodern, ironically, than the right now, because they're basically, words don't have any meaning. Everything is relative. And it's like, well, no, things do actually have an established meaning and consensus, and experts have agreed on what the definitions are, like words like fascism. Okay. Every so often, God love the political scientists. They remind us that precision of words and actually does matter. Okay. And, you do have people sort of saying that Elon Musk has staged a coup in the United States. And, that's, while it's nice and dramatic, it's not correct, okay? It is more of a state capture, but if you're talking about state capture has happened for decades. Like there's been a creep for decades. But what hit me yesterday was that people have been so busy screaming about things like, I've talked about this before, okay, far right, far left. They're pretty meaningless terms in any kind of, if you're trying to do anything meaningful other than dismiss a whole group of people, you're deeply unserious as a political commentator if you're talking about the right or the left. Okay, I use them only to meet people where they're at and for the sake of efficiency. But at the end of the day, it's a load of shit, left and right. It doesn't really fucking mean anything. Mostly because the far right have done their job to try and undermine those definitions for so long and get you so fucking confused about what words mean that they don't know what, it's just, anyway. So, but what I realised was that we've been so fixated on warning people about fascism and about authoritarianism and about all identity isms, which were a complete distraction anyway. But I'm just saying, people have been so fucking distracted with the isms and the tribalism and left versus right and all of this stuff. We forgot to tell people what democracy is and why it's worth fighting for. Okay, and that was sort of the realization. I know, nothing I'm saying here is terribly profound or unusual if you are in my circles, but for most people, I realized that there's a gap. It's also understanding, okay, but the left, in quotes, okay, however sort of nebulous that has become now, however meaningless it has become now. It will become clearer, trust me, who's left and who's right. It'll become a lot clearer if history repeats, and it will, because it does. But what we've forgotten to do in all of these discussions is forget to tell people that democracy matters and define what democracy is. Because, for all intents and purposes, capitalism is not really democratic by design. Okay, capitalism undermines democracy, and over time, through profit seeking, it accumulates in a way where you end up in this kind of state. Right, you end up here. Okay, if you're constantly incentivizing those who are most willing to exploit, most willing to exert power, most willing to if you ever have a baseline of your society built on pursuit of profit and wealth and capital and more capital, capitalism, okay, in pursuit of capitalism, you're going to end up in this direction without some sort of managed intervention by, without, tinkering at the edges of it, which is what the Keynesian model did, okay? After the Great Depression, Keynesian economics we were like, aha! We figured it out. We figured out how to make greed good and make exploitation fine and I tend to be a Keynesian, right? So bear with me. I'm warming up as I do. But somewhere along the way, both through design and somewhat by accident, I think, as well, and also just, as part of an inevitable development of sort of capitalism and the failings of a system where psychopaths are incentivized. Okay. There's a book called The Psychopath. I think it's called The Psychopath Factory, which is an interesting book. You can get it on Audible, which, it's an interesting critique of capitalism from that point of view, which is it's a psychopath factory. None of us want this system. And, some people are born psychopaths, but most of us aren't. But we're forced to behave like psychopaths in order to succeed. And we kind of resign ourselves to this banality of evil. Again, okay, you see where all of these ideas converge. But at some point, and again, somewhat intentional, somewhat accidental, somewhat as a blind spot, we forgot to describe and explain and defend democracy. Not democracy TM, brought to you by, the United States and the weapons of mass destruction. I'm not talking about that democracy. I'm talking about democracy and what it actually means and how, I would argue that the United States hasn't been a democracy for since Reagan. Let's be honest, it hasn't really. Neoliberalism is sort of the antithesis of democracy as well. It's kind of a managed version of democracy. So, I've got a chat. Hang on, I just saw it. Is this part of the practical consequences of a crazy world? This stuff snuffs out the soul. It does, doesn't it? I'm just sort of, I'm getting that just it is somewhat, look, don't let it snuff out the soul. And the thing that, to use your words, don't let it do that. And if I can give you any comfort, that is kind of how it works. And by resigning yourself to all of this and accepting all of this and embracing your powerlessness, I suppose, that's how they win. Okay. I know it's obviously, have you read, do you know what I really should do? I really should set up a book club of some sort and do actual real in-depth stuff. I have my website set up. I've got to load some books and stuff into their recommended books and whatnot. It's just a matter of being stretched too thin. But if you've read 1984, okay, people seem to forget that the protagonist gave in. They defeated him in the end. I think people forget that the takeaway from 1984 was that it reaches a certain velocity and scale and just intensity, I suppose, for lack of a better word, reaches a certain point, a tipping point where it is so hard to fight. Even the last fight, even the person who fights the hardest, it's powerful stuff. Okay, so let's just not to I don't want you to despair because I want to give you hope. I want to just maybe make you feel a bit better about the world. So yes, it is a bit inevitable in the fact that this is what I'm saying. It's hard to know where to start. And when I was writing, it's because I don't want to. Part of my frustration with a lot of everything that's going on, when you're trying to write about this stuff in a serious way, okay, where it's not content, it's something that's actually fucking meaningful, okay, when you're trying to write about it. And this is the problem that I've had with my book as well, is time and where you anchor yourself, okay, because the thing about writing about these non-pulp, if it's not pulp non-fiction, okay, if you want to actually do something that's a deeper analysis, it's really easy to get into nihilism and the black pill and all of this sort of stuff because you can zoom out and go, oh, well, okay, so this is my thought process, okay, and this is what I've been writing about. Be patient with me as I gather my thoughts. You zoom out and you go, okay, what's the Zen Buddhist approach here? You know that thing, everything is temporary. Okay, we'll zoom out. And then you start thinking about how you're an atom in the universe and it doesn't matter. And then you go, well, that's not true because you do matter. And it's important at the time and your life is your life and it is important. But you also can't focus on the micro because everything is so big. And so if you go too micro, because the mistake that everyone's making and has made for years is that focusing on the micro in terms of like the structures, and this is how these tech guys like Curtis Yarvin and all of these fuckwits that are running the show, they tripped up all of our blind spots because everyone was so focused on the micro and dismissing this macro, going no, because this is one of the things I kind of touched on it on Blue Sky the other day with someone. I'm still, again, you can tell I'm still forming these thoughts. They're early thoughts, and I'm just trying to figure out the right way to contribute something to this conversation. And that is that it's really, when you're doing the work of trying to understand what and describe, well, not understand, because you can to trying to describe and articulate where we are at in a way that doesn't either make you sound crazy, scare people, which is, one thing. You got to be cautious about scaring people, bores them to death, because it's got, in order to make your case in a way that isn't threatening, isn't scary, doesn't make you sound crazy, you need to write a PhD's worth of fucking background. Okay. And especially now with the information that we've got, that again, this is information I already knew, but it's probably new to a lot of people, which is that, civic literacy is so low that people can't even describe basic institutions and how they work. And how can you fix something that is caused by a lack of trust in institutions, caused by a lack of engagement in civics, in a world where, first of all, everyone's telling, giving bad information, okay? But people won't engage with, again, I'm not saying this is high quality information. I'm just saying this is the nature of these things, and the nature of the work is where it's really hard to know where to focus. And I'm also at that stage in my law degree, and I'm going through this as well, where I see so many fights. Like I imagine that when you go to med school, it's a similar thing, where when you go, oh my God, there's just so much suffering in the world. Where do I go? Like, it's like that. It's a bit like that with law school as well, where you go, fucking hell, there's just so many fights, big and small. Where do I go? But then you go, well, zoom out, get some perspective. The usual thing would be to zoom out and go, well, you're not that important, you don't matter. Let's zoom out and try to get it, because, one thing I try to do is zoom out and get a big picture view of this, and a bird's eye view, and go, well, we look at history. At the end of the day, this will probably collapse. If we look at history, it will probably end in violence and a lot of suffering and a lot of, all of that sort of stuff. But that scares people. You don't want that. So you can't do that. And also, if you zoom out too far, you go, nothing matters. There's no point. It's all inevitable. It's all cyclical. So you got to go, roll back from there. So where do I roll back from? Okay, well, I can't be exactly saying that I can't be saying that it's going to be okay, because it's not, okay? It's not okay. But I want to give people hope and say, well, you can fight. You see how, because the problem, but then you've got people who escape into their sort of go, well, all right, it's all too big. It's all so huge. I'm just going to go focus on the details. And focusing on the details is how we got here, which was that these guys all tripped up all our blind spots. And like I was saying before, so this Curtis Yarvin stuff, like, I cannot emphasize enough how absolutely idiotic and absurd Yarvin's ideas are, okay? Now, if you don't know it's been doing the rounds in the media, so I'm just going to assume you've seen the link. If you're interested in what I've got to say about what's going on with Elon Musk broadly, you've probably heard about the sort of unholy alliance between sort of Curtis Yarvin, your Project 2025 people, and your tech bros. Okay, I did go into that, I think, the stream before the last one, because it fucked up in the middle. But I'm saying there is one there where where I talked about that in a little bit more. But I knew about Curtis Yarvin. I watch all of the things. He's been popping up. I thought he was a fucking crazy person. And like I said on Blue Sky, and I'll get to the point about democracy, because I think it is really important if you're sort of thinking about the context in which we're talking and speaking and trying to reach people and trying to bring them back from this fascistic cliff. It's not even a cliff. We're in free fall, okay? The world, I mean, generally led by the United States. Australia's pretty stable, but we're extremely vulnerable to the forces of the United States, okay? If the US economy collapses, we're pretty fucked as well. The world's fucked, okay? So there's a lot riding on the United States not collapsing, okay? So that's why I come at it from that angle, okay? We're pretty stable, and we've got a pretty good system, but we're not immune. But how the fuck? And this was sort of one of the things that I think people are missing with this Doge thing. And I was talking to a friend about how I think he might have gone a little far down that rabbit hole. Okay, and I've seen it for a while, and I've seen it developing. And so I said something, and what he said actually struck me, because he said, well, you have to admit everything's fucked, and we've got to do something. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. And that, plus the studies on like civic literacy, sort of, the economic stuff, the anger, the trend of no matter who the government is, so incumbency. So with incumbency, now I feel like I have to explain every word that I use. But so so basically this trend against governments who are currently in power, regardless of who they are, what they're doing, what their policy is, detached from reality and facts, much like most, of the far right movements. They're sort of detached meaning from the concept and facts, and then, you kind of go along for the ride. But so if you're in power, especially if you're a Labor government, or even, like if you're a mainstream political party, so if you're Conservatives or Labor, it's not really, doesn't really matter. Whoever is in government is receiving backlash because people are angry about their lives, their circumstances, their finances, the future. They feel like they're kind of on their own. Okay. Now there's lots of explanations for that. Like, I'm not going to give you a history of the humanities, but people feel like democracy is not working. And that's because people don't know what democracy is and how we got here. And they also don't know that we are, Australia's different. It's as close to still a little, it struggles, but like anything with bureaucrats, but people, what does it mean to actually, what are you fighting for? It's one thing to go around and scream about fascism, but people want something else. People want change. And if you're sitting around and you're Kamala Harris saying democracy, we've got to save democracy, in the eyes of the average person, that means status quo. Okay. Now, the democracy is anything but that. So what you need to understand about democracy is how fucking marvelous it is, but also how democracy is as a concept. It depends. Oh, okay. Technically, yes, it is a system of government where people get to vote. Okay, so citizens get to vote. Okay, traditionally it used to be just the men or landowners or whatever, and that's expanded and expanded and expanded to more and more people. Okay, that's something that has, over time, citizens get a say in how government runs, either through representation or whatever. Okay, or consultation, various other things. You get to participate. That's the sort of reduced meaning, but people have come to associate democracy with this sort of neoliberal United States dominated version of managed democracy, okay, where people don't understand that democracy in its own right is something that is has to be fought for and consistently defended, okay? Because like for most of human history, it's democracy. Okay, democracy is not the default when you look at things historically, okay? It's not the natural state of affairs. The natural state of affairs is monarchy, kings, oligarchy was another version of that. They're all versions of that. Well, democracy is an achievement, but it's also an ongoing thing to fight for. Process. It's a hard fought thing. It's a hard fought achievement, right? And it's carved out of the wreckage of these oppressive systems. So that's one thing that you need to understand when we're talking about democracy as a model. That's part of it. But democracy is also an idea, much like socialism as well. They're orientations. They're a baseline sort of value set. They're a way of viewing the world, which is that you either see that everyone gets a say and everyone has a fair go and everyone, everyone should have basic needs met, all of those sorts of things. It's not something that's prescriptive. It's just something that describes where you want to go and where you should be. Okay, so if you are one of those sort of classical liberals, that sort of is buddying up with people who are talking about things like government efficiency or all of the things that are anti-democratic. One of the key things about liberalism is proper democracy and representation. And the thing about democracy is that it's messy, okay? Democracy is bureaucratic because you're trying to ensure representation of hundreds, thousands, millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of people and all of those interests. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if my words are coming out because I have digressed. I will orient back in a second. But I'm just saying that, it is very difficult because that was one of the things that I just realized is we take so many things for granted. So we're taking democracy for granted. Americans are taking, definitely taking what remains of a democratic system for granted. But also in terms of the political fight that the left fight, okay, the broad tent that is the left, that's everywhere from sort of communist to revolutionary to reformist. I tend to be more in the reformist camp mostly because I don't think people really understand and may witness what an actual violent revolution looks like, and you don't want that. You really don't want it. Okay, you might think you do, but you really you ain't seen nothing yet. Okay, you don't want that. You want to be able to try and make the system good. But the reason why a lot of the reasons why we've been talking about this rise of fascism and warning about it, but people don't even know what they're defending anymore because they don't even know what fascism is. They don't know what democracy is. They don't know. They've lost trust in institutions, but they can't define why. They don't know what they do, how they work. And that's a failure of the broader, that's a failure of leadership generally, but it's also a failure of the left and it has been for some time, to capture the imagination of people and to persuade, which I've talked about so many times, which is, persuading people that it's okay, that the systems are actually pretty good. You've just got to participate. You got to just get involved and know your rights. And that's the thing. I think the reason I'm not a revolutionary, okay, and is because we are built on the shoulders of all of this, better or worse, built on the shoulders of giants. Okay, how it used to be back in the old days. Okay, back in pre-Magna Carta days. Okay, you're talking about kings, and you just have some dickhead, and you see it now. This is exactly okay. It's exactly how it was. Some loser dipshit with a few guards around them says, "I'm the king. God said so." And everyone goes, and he goes, "Well, fight me for it then." And then people go, I don't want to fight. And okay. And then some other guy goes, "No, I'm the king. Fight me." And then he goes, "All right, well, I will fight you." And his head falls off. Head falls off. Get a new king momentarily. Look up the stuff around Charles I and fucking Oliver Cromwell and all that shit. It's fun. Fun times. You don't want that. Okay, that's what revolution looks like. Okay. It ain't good. People get mad. Kings go, "I'm the king. What are you going to do about it? That's mine. Give me it. That's mine. Fight me for it." Until someone calls their bluff and they go, "I call your bluff. Maybe I should be king. Maybe you're not the king. Maybe I should be. Fight me." And then that's, but eventually we got the right, I wonder. I was trying the joke. It didn't work. That's all right. You get what I'm saying. Originally, it was like, "I'm the king now. God said so. Fight me for it." It's not unusual, right? That's exactly what's happening right now. These guys want to take us back there, where might makes right. Okay, you might have heard that term before. Might makes right. Just because you've got the most money, weapons, power, you're in charge. And it's like, if you believe that, then, you're not a fan of democracy, and therefore you're the enemy of democracy, okay? And there's obviously degrees of that. So, the neoliberal credentialism sort of stuff that's risen out of the post-war period where, we're perpetually run by corporate HR is another version of that, which is, I know better than you about how to run things. No, some people do. I'm saying you need a basis. You do need to be trained and you do need to know what the fuck you're talking about. But I'm talking about elitism for elite, I'm talking about elitism, not so much credentialism, because credentialism is important. But again, when you're looking at things structurally, I know a lot of fucking idiots, a lot of rich idiots with too much power. And that's what we're seeing. Wealthy people, upper class people put into positions of power, not because they're smart, not because they earned it, not because they care about representing people, and not because they know how to do stuff, but because their dad was king. Okay? Again, it's all degrees. And, every revolution that we've had has been fighting that force, okay? Which is, I'm the king, fight me. I'm the king, fight me. Here's my son, fight him. Except now it's fucking, what is it, like tech bros, fight me with Dungeons and Dragons and fucking stupid shit. It's like, my God, you fucking losers. But again, Peter Thiel, Palantir, I'm the king, fight me. That's what he's done. He said, he's declared he's the king, fight me. Elon Musk, I'm the king, fight me. That's not democracy. That's the shit that we fought against, okay? And every so often their heads fall off and we get a reprieve from these fuckwits and they get scared for a bit because because their head fell off spontaneously. No one didn't. No one said to do it. No one saw anything. It just fell off, Your Honour. just happened. Anyway, but like the American Revolution, the French Revolution, fucking English Civil War, Magna Carta, Eureka Stockade in Australia, all of these things have resulted in they've been a result of an uprising and people realising that they didn't want a king saying, fight me. Because we wanted a say in how things were running. We wanted a say in how, like that's been, if there is a thread throughout society, is that democracy is something that you have to keep fighting for. And people don't know that. They don't know that every alternative that has been tried has been worse, okay? That's one thing about democracy that, I think people need reminding, is that anyone who has presented any alternatives, like nuclear power, people keep relitigating it. It's done. It's unviable, expensive, takes too long, and renewables have taken over. It's over. It's settled. We're done. We know that it doesn't work. It's the same thing. Democracy is the best way to do things, even though it's not ideal. Okay? And they keep relitigating the king thing. Okay? They keep going, well, I want to be king. Fight me. But no one's fighting them because they've found a new weapon, which was to get you so fatigued and so confused and so detached from what these concepts mean that you don't even understand why you should care. Because in your world, it's all shit. You can't fucking afford anything. Your job sucks. Fucking dipshit rich kids recruiter turning around on fucking LinkedIn lunatics, coming to life and being normalized rather than outliers, which I find, LinkedIn lunatics cracks me up because it's absolutely just so weird how, this is a digression, not that I haven't been digressing for the last fucking 10 years of my life, but I'm just saying, LinkedIn lunatics is where they make fun of absolute psychos on LinkedIn. But these idiots, they actually go, there was someone who got, I don't understand, I just don't understand these people. I'm not like them, so I don't get it. Where they're basically like, oh, I got featured on this thing, and they're like, I went viral. It's it's brain rot. No, you do realize that people were mocking you because you're a psycho. There is a good viral and bad viral. And I know the difference, and it's just so weird. Anyway, it's a whole digression. But then you get people who are trying to be lunatics because it promotes them. And it's just so all these perverse incentives. It's just so broken. Everything is so broken. And you look at that stuff and you look at these recruiters who turn around and say, the one that I saw on Reddit, it's, variation of the same thing. As a recruiter, it's a red flag when people ask me what the salary is. And it's like, fuck off. And, but then it's that's our life now. Because we can't even do little things without being on some sort of database. I don't know. I'm coming up for fit and proper persons test with the legal board. I don't know what the fuck is going to come up, what tweets or whatever. I don't know. And there's no way of checking until you actually you can't go, hey, can I have my databases, please? Can I have my data? They just go, nah. It's, whatever. Just saying, right? But people look to that and they go, well, is this, and then again, people don't know. They haven't got civics education. And it's okay, let's do a little empathy exercise. It's you're an ordinary person. You're part of the 70% who doesn't understand how government works. okay? Your only interactions with government are Centrelink, maybe, okay? Or institutions, okay? Maybe Centrelink, you've got your average person, they've got a job, okay? Normal full-time job. They're not in government, they work out of government, okay? The only time that they interface with the government is either with the tax office, Centrelink, or any kind of public-facing government department where they're treated like cattle, they're herded like cattle, nobody listens, they're put through layers and layers and layers of fucking outsourced call center bullshit. Okay, if not like an AI chatbot now. And that's their experience of government. They don't realise. Now, they don't know how things work. Then the pandemic hits. They're told that they can't leave the house. They don't know why. They don't know stuff. They don't know about public emergencies and people like they don't know that the government has already allowed for the fact that 10% of people won't vax or won't comply or whatever, and they're kind of massaging and creating. They don't understand that there's like all of these like systems in place that kind of allow for them to fucking be fuckwits, and you know they've got the fuckwit rule in place, and they just assume they go, oh well, 10% of fuckwits, they're going to be fuckwits, but what we need to do is persuade more people to get vaccinated, even though we know those fuckwits are never going to fucking do anything. Okay. That's again. Also, we need to pull all these different levers, because if we, especially in a public emergency, if you pull this lever over here and have lockdowns, businesses shut down, and people who can't afford food and rent and all those sorts of things, like even just something, again, their interface with government is limited. All they see is the government means I can't leave my house, I can't make money, I'm trying to call someone, I'm on hold for 3 hours. That's people's main interactions with government, okay? They don't, or the council, fucking bin police. I've talked about the bin police in our council, where they walk around looking in your bin and giving you a score for your recycling efforts. And it's like, that's how most people interact with government. And then when there's an election on, you get someone at the door, like knocking and if you're lucky, doing a pre-rehearsed script that you can't even persuade people in your own way anymore. You got to stay on script. You're not allowed to have conversations with them anymore. It used to be I don't do door knocking and stuff anymore, because it's like you just got to do a script. Like they've tailorized every fucking part of our business, of our society. Okay, down to like everything is a script. Everything is a decision tree. Everything it has been architected to death, and that is not democracy. Okay, that's just a streamlined fucking friendly fascism, and that's what we've seen with like this sort of neoliberal HR regulatory environment. Now, that's how it looks, but it's not how it functions. So, I mean, in the United States maybe, but here, the reason why governments run the way that they do is because of things like the separation of powers, okay? Checks and balances. Because these institutions actually exist and thrive because we've learned from previous mistakes, okay? So it's really hard to explain. There's just so much and again, people either engage with this or they don't, and it is really, really hard to reach someone who isn't interested in the first place. But I will always try, and I'm not very good. I'm not the best person, because I'm not going to sit and make, I'm not that person. But where we've gone wrong is that people just, they see democracy not working. They don't know the basics about what democracy is or means. They don't know how it was formed. They don't, like I said, they don't know that every alternative ends badly and we land here. And democracy sucks. I'd prefer idiocracy than the opposite, okay? Idiocracy is still democratic, and I've joked about that before, is that, you got to be careful with idiocracy jokes, because the flip side to idiocracy is eugenics. Okay? Be careful. That's the slippery slope. And that's the worldview of your, your Elon Musks and your Curtis Yarvins and all of those things. But again, it's like, I cannot emphasize enough how stupid these tech bro politics philosophies are, to the point where even those who are doing the work and trying to diagnose and trying to understand where there was, all that sort of stuff, didn't think it warranted serious attention until recently. Like even those, there's a guy doing the rounds at the moment who's been on this beat for a while, and he said I daren't even mention it, like up until recently, because it was just so implausible, so absolutely ridiculous. And most people who do know how government works were like, there's no way they can do this. Turns out they can. I'm the king. Fight me. Is the whole thing. And I want to sort of go back to that. And so I've gone way off track. Let me just see where my dot points land me. Oh, yeah. So they're talking about like efficiency and like debt and all these sorts of things and what they mean. And a big part of how this is, I think a lot of whether it gets better or worse depends on a couple of things. One, I don't think we can control. People are too far gone. Like, honestly, I think it's really hard to give advice. As someone who's been screaming into the void now on this stuff for a couple of years now, going, this is not okay. This is not okay. Even I was caught blind. Like the last few weeks have just like been like, what the fuck? I can't believe this is happening. Like, it's one thing for you to think it's happening in the abstract. It's another thing to see it actually come true. And I think a lot of the paralysis that people have is just absolute shock at what we're seeing, and trying to just find the right way to reach people in fast, because it needs to be fast. Hitler dismantled Germany in 53 days. And you say, well, it might not be like that. And this is the crazy making part about when you're in the position of sort of understanding history and politics and, all those sorts of things. And you're trying to do meaningful analysis and trying to figure out where you put your attention, where you target your energy, and how you help, where you can fit and do something. This is how you get paralyzed, like I am. Because I've also still got law school to do, and all, like your daily life doesn't go away either. You have to, because for so many years we've been told that everything crazy means that you're too online, or you're conspiracy theories, or that you've gone down a rabbit hole, or whatever. And some of the checks that I put in place for myself, because when you're sort of studying these things and you go down a rabbit, you know how easy it is to sort of go into crazy town with this stuff and become paranoid. That's why you got to stay anchored in actual evidence, okay? Not Twitter screenshots. Research. Okay, now research and those things, they're slow, they're boring, but they're slow and boring for a reason, and I'll get to that. There's a reason why the system is inefficient, and it should be. It's supposed to be inefficient, because it puts a pause on acceleration. It puts a pause on things like this. Okay. When you are doing the kind of work that I do, trying to solve, like trying to figure out where to put your energy, like I said. I'm just trying to find myself back, orient my brain back. When you're trying to do that, you're constantly going, you're doing a crazy check all the time. Okay, you're constantly doing a crazy check. So you go, all right, that's too much. It's too much. You get, you kind of, you look at some of the stuff, and then you kind of take a turn to the transhumanist stuff, and you go, that's enough internet for you. Okay. The difference between me and your average street crazy is, well, first of all, I understand how this system works, so I am less prone to conspiracies. Okay, so I know how stuff works, so I'm just, but I'm also like, you kind of go down various holes, and you go, okay, that's enough internet for you, Taya. Curtis Yarvin and Teal and all this stuff, that was parked firmly in that file. That's enough internet for you, Taya. Focus elsewhere. Look somewhere else. That'll never happen. Same, and I think that's what happened with Project 2025 as well. A lot of people were, it was so audacious that people didn't really believe it, that it was, that it was the plan. And now we're seeing that it always has been the plan. But I mean, it's been the plan since the 70s, but they've found that, one thing about the Republicans is that, they're constantly pen testing the government, right? And they found an opportunity to sort of, where interests have sort of aligned. Now, the good news is that the interests diverge again. I've talked, if you want more about that, look the other stream about this, where I talk about in more detail the interests of each of these factions, because I think that they'll break apart. What we can do is hope that this is a failed takeover rather than a successful one, where but yeah, anyway. But a lot of this stuff, and I think you should cut people some slack. First of all, because most people are still just adjusting. It was like, I don't know if you remember the first few weeks of the pandemic, people were just sort of sleepwalking a little bit. Like, this can't be real, okay? And eventually, things sort of settled and got worse, and you kind of, there was a shock, and then people had, adapted. It was funny because remember how we thought that like things would get better? Remember that few weeks where the canals were clear and people were making food for everybody and cheering everybody, and world peace. There was going to be world peace, everyone. It was an opportunity to fix things. And that was the one lesson we took from COVID, was that we could fix things. We keep trying. We try. We've been beaten down for a bit. We need to find that again. Okay, there's always opportunities to rebuild. Okay, and we just need to find our fucks again. Okay, but again, it just comes back to knowing what you're fighting for. What do you believe in? I mean, if anything, kings are efficient. Kings are very efficient with justice. I mean, it's not a lot of justice, more efficiency than justice, but they're efficient. Okay. Do you want to live under those things? And I'm sure you think, he's just fixing the government. He's just fixing things. Okay. But what if he's not? What if you're wrong? What if you're part of the 70% of people who can't pass a basic civics test? What if you do that test and you got 2 or 3 of those wrong, and that's a basic civics test for a 10-year-old? What if you got a couple of those wrong? And you're wrong. And maybe, what if Elon Musk is not actually saving the government? What if he is saying, I'm the king, fight me? Maybe. Just think about it. Is that what you want? Entertain the thought. Don't just, again, this is aimed at the people who are on the fence and defending Elon Musk. And some of this stuff will become shorts or whatever. Like, I'll just riff and see if I get any shorts out of it. But for those that do still think that he's just looking for waste, fraud and abuse, and you're just parroting waste, fraud and abuse, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. What if you're wrong? What if he is everything that everyone is saying he is? Do you consent to the worst case scenario? Because I don't think many people do. I don't think you actually want a king. I think you think that you want change and you want democracy. This isn't how you're going to get it. Okay. And I think that the biggest failure liberalism in general, okay, particularly neoliberalism, is that it has attached itself to democracy, TM, stripped it out, gutted it completely and turned it into some weird HR conference that it's not democracy. Do you have democracy anywhere in your life? Where do you have democracy? Okay, now you have the option of it. Like in Australia, we've got the reason why. Hang on, let me just think. You got to understand so let's start with democracy. Democracy means that you get a say in how things run. Okay. You're not going to get a direct say in every thing. Okay. Now, most public servants, take these things seriously. Like, I know that as I'm coming up to my oath, I do take serving the public and the courts very seriously. I take that oath extremely seriously. And I think that most, like as a lawyer and as much like a doctor, there's doctors who take the Hippocratic Oath seriously. I do take those things seriously. Politicians, for the most part, do take that oath seriously. Some don't, but, most do. And if you're a lawyer and a politician, you've given 2 oaths. Okay? You've given one to serve the courts and serve the rule of law and all of those things. That's one thing that people don't realize, I think, about being a lawyer is that you're, when you ask, where the lawyer's primary responsibility lies, and people will say, oh, no, the client, and it's not. It's the courts and justice. Okay. You're an officer of the court first, client second. Okay. And by officer of the courts, it means you exist to serve the public in the best interests of, you work in the interests of the public. Okay. And that's what it is. It's just people who seem to have forgotten what democracy means, what the oaths mean. Departments who get away, who there's, obviously, one of the things I think that we need to do, and I apologize if I'm a little flat, because you can tell that I'm just I'm just in my fucking head trying to make sense of all of this stuff, and taking you along with me, because I think all of us are a bit like, I think if you've got straightforward ideas right now about how to move forward and how to proceed and how to process everything that you're seeing, you're missing stuff. Or you're regurgitating talking points. Okay. Waste, fraud and abuse. Waste, fraud and abuse. Oh my God. If you say waste, fraud and abuse, it's like, oh, you lose credibility with me. You're just like, get your own thoughts. Okay. Part of the reason I stream is so that we can just go through, you can actually see that it's okay to not have easy, digestible answers and content and all of those things straight away, and to just sort of see where we land and just where we're at, and see if we can come up with stuff. Because this stuff's big, and anyone who pretends that it's not is lying. Like, is it a coup? No, not technically. Is it a problem? Yes. It's like, coup's not quite the right word. It's statutory capture is probably more correct. But when you're looking, like I said, when you're looking at, I'm doing the fucking 85-year-old thing and going back in circles. But, but it is important that these words, that are defined, and statutory capture has been happening for some time. And that's, this is the end stage of sort of decades of corporate control over our democracy. Or, collective, the US democracy particularly, but, it affects ours as well. Now, over time, when the king's heads fell off, okay, we started to put systems in place, especially in France, okay. French Revolution, they had, they sort of they created a new system. That again didn't go so great either. Napoleon, another digression, didn't go so great. Correct from that. Try again, correct. Try again, correct. Okay, democracy is something that you just keep fighting for and keep trying to achieve. Okay. But as part of that, we learned over time that concentrated power is dangerous. Okay. And I think that, again, when people can't even define what democracy means and what sort of why it's important, when presented with change for change's sake, they're going to take it. And I know I've been really shit at defining democracy today, because it's not really a lecture. I'm just sort of more just thinking it through, and I'm just trying to figure out like the best way. It's like I'm in constant fucking tension of having to give a year 5 civics education and try to anchor people in, like, and get people to act and get people to understand what's happening. And it's like, we're so far behind and people don't even know. I'm just so pissed off that people don't know the basics. And is it too late? And that's my question is it too late for people to learn the basics? Is it too late? Has the horse bolted? And without some major correction, and by correction, that's a euphemism for violence or massive instability. Are people going to value? I don't want my kids to be living in a world where they don't have a say in the future. They're pretty smart. They've got good ideas. Those Zoomers are pretty smart people. They've got some ideas. Okay, I want them to have a say in their future. I want them to have a future. But I can't help but think that it's got to run its course, and I hate that. But again, I have to say, you do have power. Okay, so one thing you can do is refuse to comply. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, my brain digress. Sometimes I just blue screen, and I'm just trying to find my place back, especially when we're talking about fucking this shit. It's a lot, and people are overwhelmed, and they're also looking for answers. And I feel like I don't have any, and it's really hard because it's like I have some, but like you got to be careful about what you say. And because I don't want people to feel like it's like hopeless, but I don't want people to come away with the wrong message either. So it's like, so it means that I have to sort of sit and fall over my thoughts every so often. So give me a sec. You have to understand that the separation of powers, the balance of powers, and the judiciary is really critical for your freedom, for your rights, and undermining that is really dangerous. Okay. And again, when people don't understand the role of the courts, it's real, to begin with, it's hard to know where to begin. But all I can say is that you do actually have a lot more rights than you realise. Now, for example, in Australia, so there's been a lot of hoopla about the sort of hate speech laws, okay, especially in Germany. Now, again, let's remember what I said about, like, we're always learning and adapting. Think of it as an iteration, okay? If you're in tech, think of it as we're always iterating. We're always doing sort of lean UX, okay? We're doing lean product stuff all the time, okay? And we're always doing sort of sprints. But think about, let's use an agile analogy here. You have a problem, okay? You have some sort of societal problem, okay? And you need a solution. You need to fix it, okay? What do? You sit down and you break down the problem into small components and you try to identify the actual problem, okay? That's problem identification in the policy cycle. So in policy land, in politics land, you have to identify the problem correctly, otherwise the solution's wrong, okay? So it's the same thing in tech, where if you poorly identify the problem, you create other problems, other bugs, okay? So if you don't identify the source of a bug, you can't just sit there and go lie on the live site and just hope it works and without unintended consequences, okay? So it's the same thing in policy. It takes time. It takes research. You're dealing with livelihoods. It's a lot more serious. It's not an app. It's not downtime. It is, it's like all of these people with Elon Musk and this Doge thing, the sheer recklessness where people are like, oh, it was only down for 12 hours. Yeah, it was Meals on Wheels that was down for 12 hours. That means that some people didn't get food for 12 hours. It's not, oh, you couldn't use TikTok. Okay. And even then, it wasn't, TikTok was still, well, some people, that could have been the difference between making rent and not making rent for some creators. Okay. Like maybe that was their peak time that it was down. Maybe that was their only source of income, whatever. Okay. These actions have consequences. And I know that, like it's not, oh, your website's down. Okay. Oh, and one of the things, okay, so when we were running the agency, one of the things that I used to say, because I used to be in social work, so was that, no one's going to actually die if the website goes down. Okay. It's not a mission critical thing. Like people used to act like that everyone would die if their website was down, that no one visited anyway. It's like they had like one visitor a day and they're like, oh, it was down just in case that one visitor showed. It's like, you know what, like you chill. This does actually hurt people. Okay. So when you're in policy, the reason you can't, this is a separate kind of conversation, maybe a separate stream. I don't even know if this stream was any good, but had any substance to it. But you've got the separation of powers for a reason, okay? What does the separation of powers mean? Okay? It means you've got the executive. Donald Trump is the executive of America. He's the president, okay? In Australia, it is the Governor General, okay? Not the Prime Minister, okay? It's a bit more complicated. In America, you've got a president. President is the head of state. In America, they can issue executive orders, okay? Now, it's a bit novel it's only a recent thing that they're sort of using executive orders in this manner. Like this is not a normal thing. A major convention with the separation of powers, okay, is that the power lies with Congress, okay? There are two houses of Congress, and no department gets created, nothing happens, no money gets spent, anything like that. The primary rule maker, lawmaker, whatever, is Congress, who theoretically represent the people, okay? Like it or not, they get elected, whatever complicating factors, it's, they represent the people, okay? That is the primary decision maker, okay? President acts like a CEO, not a literal CEO, because companies aren't government, okay? They're not the same thing. Just like government debt isn't the same as household debt. And why the fuck these billionaires are complaining about debt? It's not when he literally is leveraged. Elon Musk is running on debt. He has all paper money and he uses IOUs to fucking get loans. He's in debt. Literally, the banks have just sold his Twitter debt. It's like the money he borrowed to buy Twitter because it's all Tesla shares. It's all backed on the base of Tesla shares. At least the government uses bonds. It's like, anyway. It's like fucking talking to people. Why don't you pay your debts then? Why don't you pay the bank? Like your debt, dickhead. Like Silicon Valley particularly. This is why they're hypocrites and liars. All of Silicon Valley is built on debt. It's like an imaginary money, and I'm good for it. And it's like, yeah, and then you're coming in and telling the fucking government where debt doesn't work that way in government because they actually control the currency in the United States. It's not like Greece or Italy because Greece and Italy were like hedged to a foreign currency. They're reliant on a foreign currency. America controls the currency, so it doesn't matter. Okay, debt it's imaginary. Okay, it doesn't work. It doesn't exist. Anyway, again, just relying on the fact that you don't know how stuff works and don't know the basics. Like government debt is not like your credit card debt. Okay, it's not the same thing. What was I saying? I was going on to so the balance of power. So Congress, Parliament, whatever. Okay, the role of that. Good job saying judiciary, Taya. Is that they interpret the law and apply the law and decide, what the law means. Okay. But they are both equal sources of law, okay? You got case law and statute. Now, again, this is basic shit. How the fuck do you reach somebody who doesn't even know that? Okay? It's like, well, I've just explained year 5 civics to you, which is that, and they're turning around and saying that judges can't make law, and it's like, well, yeah, they can. That's called case law. There's literally, it's precedent. The judicial. I don't know why my stutter's coming through. Why am why that's I'm stammering with that today. But anyway, why their job is to literally interpret and provide oversight and checks and balances on the executive. That is the role of that branch of government. I can't say judiciary. Don't know why. My mouth just doesn't want to do it today. Hang on. Maybe my mouth wants to do this. I really should have guests, I think. But so the role of the judiciary is to provide checks and balances. That's literally to prevent kings going, I'm the king, fight me. The judiciary is supposed to go, hey, you're not the king. Calm the fuck down. Okay, that is literally their job. Okay. Now they've got this but one thing Australians don't know, and this comes back to the study, the report, the inquiry that they did into civics and civic literacy in Australia, is that people think that our system runs like America. So not content with not knowing how our system works, even though we've got a federation as well. So we've got similar. It's a hybrid between the UK and the US. We've got the same thing. We've got the executive, judiciary, and parliament, and but the Prime Minister and Cabinet are part of the legislative branch. Okay, they're not the executive. They are informally the but the executive is the person who sort of ratifies bills and all that sort of stuff is the Governor General, who's a representative of the King. Now, we don't have executive orders, okay? So the only time in our history that the Governor General has intervened in a way that overreached and was in the Whitlam dismissal. And that was such an egregious thing that it hasn't been done since, and hopefully it never is. The only way that you can pass any kind of constitutional amendment or anything like that is through a referendum. Okay, and to get a referendum, you've got to get 2/3 of Parliament, all that sort of stuff. Okay. But we've also got, what's different with us is that you've got, everything is established by statute. Okay, so every government department, and it's the same with the US. This is why when they're talking about efficiencies and can you believe that this is running here and here and here and there's efficiencies and they're doing all these silly things and whatever. It makes sense when you understand how the separation of powers works, because there will be duplicate systems, okay? Because keeping siloed information is literally limiting their power as a department, okay? So the way that it works is that government departments, okay, so I'm just trying to think of an example. I won't use an ombudsman department. What will I use? Let me just think. So let's go with, I'm just trying to think of a good example so that, because I've also then got the regulatory part. So you've got okay, let's go with communications just generally. Okay, so the communications minister. Actually, no, let's go with defence. So you've got sort of home affairs, defence, minister. That department can only do what it's allowed, what the powers that it has are by an act of parliament. Okay, much like the UK. So an act of parliament establishes the department, says what its powers are. They are limited to only that. Okay, and that's it. That's all it can do without amending that in Parliament. Okay, which means that you need to go through both houses of Parliament with a majority in both. Okay, and spending bills and money bills can only come from the House of Reps. You can't initiate all that sort of stuff. Anyway, exceptions, confusing, boring. It's established by an act of Parliament. It is limited. It is very specific, and that is then interpreted by the courts. Now, what we've got is we also then have ombudsmans. Okay, we have an ombudsman system, which is for administrative review. Okay, so in defence, you've got you've got the Defence Department that has that's probably a bad example. You have the department that has its mandate to do only this with this. The minister only has certain powers. The minister can't override. You've got to do certain things, all that sort of stuff. Okay. They establish the department and all of the rules around how to do it. Then you've got judicial review, which is where people can get that ombudsman to scrutinise and appeal the department decision. So you can go and appeal any government decision by going through a tribunal. Okay, so we've got that kind of system there. Okay, so you've already got those checks and balances at every level. Okay. Yeah, I've been a little scatterbrained today because I've got this opiate patch and for my pain, and so sometimes I've noticed, I think that what happens is I think it's tapering off. So when I have a fresh patch on, it's stronger, and so it kind of just affects my sleep and stuff and all those things. And so I end up in it's like the day after I change the patch, it seems to be stronger. So it's just I probably shouldn't be streaming on Wednesdays, but I think that it's not as even though the patch is theoretically supposed to be even, I don't think it is. So thank you. I apologize if I'm scatterbrained, but it's just, I think I just need to try and get through to people that a lot of these things that they're saying aren't correct and they aren't true. And government is inefficient for a reason. And a lot of it is because the power is limited. So I'm going to use a classic example of how it works here, because I don't know enough about this. So the thing is, another reason I'm stammering is because I have to be very careful about talking about legal shit, staying well in line with political analysis and not being perceived to be explaining legal shit, because I've got to be really careful about that. Because I'm not a lawyer and they don't take too kindly to me doing that. So I'm keeping my nose clean there. Okay. It's an ethical issue. Like, so my brain's sitting there fucking doing like all these things. So when I try to speak about things I don't know about, especially the American legal system in detail, it kind of goes, I can't. So let me talk about Australia. So, the reason why government is inefficient, and there is nothing wrong with it being inefficient, it's supposed to be, is that that's how the fucking, you silo the power, you contain power, you contain the power of any one department. There's a reason why the right-wing governments, okay, like super departments. So what the coalition, so any Americans or anyone who else is watching about Australia, when I say liberal are conservative here. Okay, so the Liberal Party is conservative. This is nice and confusing for everybody. And the Labor Party are our sort of broad, democratic, we're further left than the Democrats. But our Liberal Party have lurched pretty like GOP right these days. So they're kind of gone off the deep end a bit. But the Labor Party is a sort of broader ideological tent. And I would argue it's probably the default of the country. I think, who was it that joked about this recently? Oh, Friendly Geordies, and he was like, there's the Labor Party and then the rest of them. Like that's sort of, probably similar in the United States with the Democrats, if they can get their fucking shit together, ideologically, I mean. But that's not really the case anymore, but it used to be. But the Conservative governments like bigger departments for the reason being that they, first of all, it's more efficient, but also it provides more oversight and ministerial discretion and all of those sorts of abuses of power. So what has happened here, again, asterisk, don't quote me, this is not legal analysis, but there's been a lot of High Court challenges since Peter Dutton was Home Affairs Minister. So what they did was they rolled defence, a bunch of other things, immigration, into a massive Home Affairs department. Basically, it was one massive department that was basically fucking Orwellian. Okay, it was like Big Brother shit. Everything, foreign affairs, immigration, something else. Okay, and they make that big department and they streamline those systems. But what they do is that centralizes power more. So the bigger the department, the more centralized the power. The smaller the department, yes, they're more siloed. Yes, there's overlap. Yes, they're more inefficient, but they're inherently more less open to abuse of power because it's contained. Okay. Now, the thing about that is that ministers have some degree of discretion, but not much. Sorry, I'm doing it again. Doing that thing where I'm trying to decide what's relevant. So you can only, government waste is a good thing, is my point, because you want overlapping services, but contained. So robo-debt is a really good example of how this can go, how this went really badly, which was when you had data sharing between the ATO and Centrelink, okay? and all of it's sort of, consolidation of the databases, right? And people were sort of unfairly victimized by this scheme, which later came out to be unconstitutional. Okay, it's the same thing with when you're doing human rights law, Dutton's it's like, what isn't unconstitutional with his version of these fucking things? Like, most of his actions were, I can't believe he's still minister, like, based on the stuff, like the fact that it's not gross misconduct for a minister to deliberately pass legislation that they know to be unconstitutional is, and that doesn't get them sacked. I don't. That's a failure of our system, is that you've got this concept called ministerial responsibility, and he should not even be a minister, or he shouldn't even be in Parliament, let alone prospective Prime Minister, based on his, the unconstitutionality and the just sheer. Anyway, should be. That's a whole other digression around ministerial conduct and shit. Maybe I should just be a minister. Maybe I should do that. But you got to understand that the small departments are more democratic because, first of all, they're because they're siloed. They can only act within their fuck this shit. I give up. Can't remember what I was saying. I'm tired. I got to go. My brain's not working. Faded. What time is it? Oh, it's an hour and a half. See? You forgot you're on camera too, dickhead. All right. It's usually a sign that I've been talking too long and need a break. But remember that, how it basically works is that, yes, the Parliament and the people, and as imperfect as it is, Congress, Parliament, whatever you call it, is the most important thing, okay? As is the courts. As is, they're all equally important, okay? But I can't, anyway, part of the reason why I'm stammering is because I feel just like it's futile. Like, I sit there, this is the calculation that's always going on in my head, which is, opiates aside, but also, what grade level do I speak at? What do I explain? How do I over-explain? But if I under-explain it, people will go, what does that mean? If I over-explain it, people will go, fucking no, and then argue with me. People will ask me what words mean. People will ask me this, ask me that. And I'll go, look it up. And then they won't look it up. And then I'll see studies and research that says people don't even fucking care about the basics. We've got an election coming up that's actually really important, with a government that is an objectively good government. But because of, the incumbency stuff, all this fear-mongering coming from, from the United States, and from Murdoch Press, and this constant, just lying about, everything. Both lying and lying by omission. So if you actually look at the list of accomplishments that Labor have achieved, I've got people arguing with me saying, they've had 4 years. It's like, well, how can they have had 4 years? They've only been in a 3-year term. But they're so certain. They're so certain. And they go, oh, well. And it's like, well, if you can't, why are you arguing if you don't even know the basics? And then you sit there and they go, yeah, well, they've had 3 years. And I go, well, they haven't actually. They've had 2 at best, if you're generous. Because, that's right, because I was trying to explain policy cycle. And it works like any kind of project management. It takes time to implement. I don't know why people think we've got executive orders where you just, it's not going to help. We need to really work on educating people that we're not America, because it started with COVID, where people were fighting for their fucking rights. It's like, you don't have any fucking rights here, okay? Not the same over there, and they're idiots. Maybe you should have fewer rights. And I'm kidding, of course. You have the rights that actually matter, not the rights that are like, you have more rights in Australia than you do in the US right now. Trust me. And it's just, I don't know how to express how important it is that you engage with how the system works and learning the basics of democracy, the history, and why it's important. And that just because you don't understand it, it doesn't mean that those who are talking about fascism, like you got to start paying it. It's not. If you don't know what democracy is and you don't know what fascism is, okay, then you are absolutely not in a position to reject anyone who is saying this is fascism. Okay, so if you can't define the basics, like I said, they've had 4 years. No, they haven't. They've had 3, okay? And that's being generous because it usually takes a year for a government, especially when you know the cycle between Labor and Liberal, okay? When you inherit a shitty fucking setup from the coalition who have, neglected everything and let it die and fucked everything up. There's so much mess that Labor inherits. It takes a year to even shuffle cabinet, hire people, reorganize things, assess priorities, figure out, and that's even without coming off the back end of a pandemic and all of those other, the inflation and all these things. Labor fixes everything and then the coalition fucking says that they're shit and then everyone's an idiot. And it's just, how do you even begin to persuade people? Like, it's not my thing. Like, our journalists aren't doing a very good job, they're not doing anything. And it's like, why should it be on me to fucking educate the whole world and persuade the whole world and fucking, beg people to pay attention for more than 30 seconds and, read stuff? It's like most of the time I come on here and I stream and it's like, read stuff, learn stuff. It's like, in Australia particularly, like it's not like it's America where any dipshit with a microphone can make a living. Like the market here is small, right? There's not many people who are interested in what I've got to say here. Americans don't listen to Australian accents. They don't care. And, they don't listen. They think they know it all. Okay. And it's just a fire hose of stupid nonstop. And anyone with a microphone, whatever. But it's just like, I'm going to tell you to just read stuff. I'm not going to tell you, it's not my job. I'm not a fucking teacher. I'm not anything other than just someone who's sitting here talking and trying to make people feel less alone and like keeping camera skills going. Like, who gives a shit? I'm a writer more than anything else. And, soon a lawyer. And it's like, read stuff. Well, I don't know what to say. Do the work. And it's just like, the answer is just like, all I can do is express frustration that people won't even do that. Oh, what should I read? I don't know. Google it. You get to that point. You do get to that point where people are just like, oh, well, what's the point of anything? And that's what just spins around in my head the whole time, is what's the point of any of this? Because, you've got Joe Rogan and Bridget Fetisi. What a fucking, sitting there, the dumbest people on the planet. And they just declare victory. They've got no evidence for that. And it's embarrassing. And I used to be friends with Bridget, and may she never have to face her daughter with what she's fucking bringing in and what she's encouraging. She will. She'll have to. And it's like, good luck. But it's not, why should it be my job up against people who are paid $250 million to fucking, it's obviously rigged in favor of idiots. It's like, I could just sit here and make stuff up too. I'm just going to make stuff up. I'm going to start starting the conspiracy theory. It's like, I actually do care that I say the right thing. And part of the reason that I'm stammering and wandering is because my brain is going, don't say that. Responsibility. That's the paradox of this fucking expertise thing, is that anyone who can say anything, who actually knows what they're talking about, has a board breathing down their fucking neck. Every time they try to fucking do anything about bad information, there's someone going, you shan't do it that way. Well, how do you get people to listen then? You got to be more like, you got to meet people where they're at. Yeah, I'm going to swear. You got to be interesting. Fucking hell. People who actually know what they're talking about are fucking held censored the whole fucking time. During the pandemic, the medical board told doctors they couldn't fucking speak. Wouldn't it have been better if they could have not let these dipshits fucking take over? That's another thing that pisses me off about those, like, just generally the fact that the death of expertise, like the fact that, you know, who gives a fuck about a verified check? Why can't I tell people that I've got a degree in XYZ? Why isn't that a badge for people? It's like, oh, well, it's like, no, just any idiot who's more, just fucking people who can just say whatever the fuck, but say it with confidence. As long as you say it with confidence and get to the point within 30 seconds and do it in a TikTok, you're an authority. If it's a bit complicated and there's a lot to explain and there's a lot of, I don't know, foundational knowledge that you need to just kind of even begin to explain or help, God forbid that there's actually some complex fucking issues with no answers, and especially not easy ones, when people don't even know what democracy is, when it is the thing that is like absolutely the most important thing that's just so worth fighting for. Because 50 years of fuckheads who, you know, like are greedy and need power have made it their mission to confuse people and fuse it with their fucking Taylorist bullshit. Democracy, TM. We must preserve my position at all costs because it's democracy. And it's like, well, most people are going to reject that and go, well, I'll take the fascism, thanks. And that's what's happening, is that people are, the word fascism has been so diluted that people think that all the cool people are fascists. That's really how it's like that was a massive mistake, which is that everyone forgot to explain what democracy is and live according to democratic principles. No wonder we're here. Because you got this dipshit, I'm the king, fight me. It's like, well, what am I going to tell? What do I tell you? The people who want to know what democracy is, know. The people who value it know what it is. The people who don't can't be reached because of decades and decades and decades of all of the wrong incentives for all of the stupidest people to be amplified. You know, like, I'm not saying that I'm a fucking articulate superstar who deserves like an audience or whatever. You know, obviously as a writer, I'm better. And today, like, obviously I'm on opiates, so it's a bit different. But generally, it's like, how do you even begin when you like that statistic? 73% can't even don't even know the basics of democracy. I'm not even talking about advanced stuff like separation of powers. That's not even that. Like, that's the stuff I'm talking about is like 201. Like, they can't even do 101 stuff like democracy, defining it, what it is, and why it's a good thing, and how we got here. And yeah, it's fucking annoying. Idiocracy is also democracy. Yes, that comes with it. Idiots get to vote. That's the point. It's annoying. but you put fucking guardrails around it so that the idiots don't have too much control over any one part of society. You contain it. You know? And it's just like, fuck me. Anyway. But yeah, it's not a coup. It is kind of, but it's not technically a coup. It's definitely fascistic, and they are implementing Project 2025, and they are trying to attack democracy. That said, democracy has been dead for some time in the United States, so it is really the end conclusion. And so, you know, again, the accelerationists might have a point, but without a serious conversation about what democracy even means, you know, like, and what, like, getting back to what Congress is and what it does and what it's supposed to do, and what the courts do, and investing in education, and they're doing the opposite. They're actually defunding the fucking education department. They're doing the opposite. Okay. I can't see it getting better. I mean, like, my YouTube channel, like, what I get, probably across the board, I get about 1,000, probably 1,000-ish full views. Okay. It's about, wow, you know, you can't exactly do much with that. Maybe, you know, I do need to write. I need to be regularly writing more. I'm a better writer than I am a streamer, but it's like, you can't, I can't go up against this stuff. Like, you know, like, you need to, like, if there's anyone who has a bigger platform who can say one thing, is the mistake that you're making is that you need to sell democracy again. You need to sell them on democracy, real democracy. Okay, now, you know, socialism is part of it, but take that out of it. Take the teeth out of that. It's too loaded. People are just, you're not left. Just fight for democracy. Use whatever words you have to use. Liberal democracy. Doesn't matter. Just fight for that, because that is, you know, like, it doesn't, that's the most important thing that is under threat right now. The version of democracy that you get is immaterial. Okay. Yes, it flows on from economics, and obviously you do need some form of economic revolution as well. But if you're focused on one thing, it should be educating people on what democracy is and why it's worth fighting for. And, you know, we don't want kings. They're not the boss of us, especially fuckwits like Elon Musk. Right? No, they're not. They're not cleaning up the government. And also, you need to stop fighting the right on their turf. When they say, "Oh, the government's inefficient," and they go, "No, we are efficient. We are." It's like, no, government is inefficient. It's supposed to be. Fuck off. Pay your taxes. You're in a society. That's how you keep the balance of powers going. Yes, it's inefficient. It's going to be. It's by design. Shut the fuck up. Educate the public about why it's inefficient and has to be and will be. Tell these guys to fuck off and pay their taxes. And also educate the public on the fact that they are just, again, this is something that can be tweaked. Again, this is, you know, I'm not telling people how to message, okay? But there is a gap here, which is you got to stop pandering to these fuckwits on their terms. Reject the framing of efficiency, because it's like, no, it is inefficient for a reason, because they're working within their powers and only their powers. And it goes wrong when you have departments where, you know, they overreach. They're operating within the act that determines what they're allowed to do and not do. That's going to be inefficient. Otherwise, you end up with a massive fucking 1984 situation. Okay? And it's like, government is supposed to be slow. And a lot of, again, this stream, I didn't explain the things I wanted to explain. It's probably something I should probably write. But, you know, the role of the courts is to make sure that that process is followed, and that there's checks and balances, and that things are constitutional, and all of these things. And the policy cycle, you do the research. You try to you diagnose the problem correctly. You talk to stakeholders, you get submissions, you have consultation periods, then you draft a bill, then you get feedback on the bill. And then people are like, he's not doing anything. It's like, he has. It just takes time to do stuff. It's more than a tweet. Policy is more than a fucking, you can't just, it takes time to do things. You can't just go, rent freeze. It's unconstitutional. You can't do that. We've had a referendum on price controls and that sort of stuff, and it was rejected. You got a problem with it? Try to change the Constitution. Guess what? You can't. So you got to work within what the guideline, within the system that you've got. And it's easy for the Greens. I'm going to do another thing about the Greens, but it's easy for them to say that because they've never had to be in government. They've never had to actually implement any fucking thing ever. They're the people that show up at committee and whinge and make amendments to things and complain about things. Okay, they don't actually do the heavy lifting of drafting and, introducing things or, determining policy priorities and trying to figure out ways to fix a housing crisis when the main solution to the housing crisis gets you kicked out of government. And so you've got to work around that and also around Murdoch Press and a hostile upper house. You can't just turn around and ignore Parliament, ignore the Constitution. You can't just ignore the public and the consultation process. You can't just introduce policy without doing research first. It takes time. You can't just win government and go, government you got to transition your fucking departments. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have a plan, a project plan. If you've ever tried to implement any kind of project, this is how I know if anyone has a senior, serious job or has ever held one in their life. And it is someone who thinks that shit just happens. If you've ever tried to implement any kind of project, whether it's across corporations, whether it's like a digital project, a real project, if you ever tried to have 5 people, a family project, a renovation, anything, okay? If you've done anything with your life, you know that you've got to plan shit and have a strategy. And if you just go in haphazard, you're going to end up blowing out on costs and time and fucking have unintended consequences. And it's just like, and anyone who is selling you do something, it's like, well, what do you mean by that? That's a separate thing. I'm going to be talking about that at the next stream, about hopefully a bit better than today. But, what do you mean by do something? Because people think that we got executive orders or something. They must do. Or they think that, you end up with a situation like Elon Musk's fucking invasion or coup or capture. Okay. And he's ignoring everything. He's ignoring the Constitution. He is, and whether they say it's legal or not, it's not legal. Okay. They're leaning on a niche theory that is not really backed by case law. Okay. The thing about the law, as I've said before, is that you can make a claim, and until it's actually ruled on, you don't know. But it's pretty thin reasoning, okay? You'd have to throw out an awful lot of case law for anything that Elon Musk is doing to be considered even remotely acceptable or legal, if not completely fucking, if not treasonous and that's what if not severely criminal, okay? Again, not legal advice, just general commentary. I've actually been thinking that I think I'm going to end up going into prosecutions, believe it or not, in government. So we'll see how we go. But because I think that the integrity of our institutions is the thing that's going to be the biggest fight. I think that maintaining those is I don't know, helping them not crumble. It's going to be the biggest fight. It's going to be the fight of our lives in the next decade, I think, especially if the US goes first. trust in institutions is a big thing at the moment, big problem. But how can you, and this is just a rhetorical thing, I think, which is, people, it's not a coincidence that the trust in institutions or mistrust of institutions has gone up in line with knowledge of those institutions and how they work. And so it seems to be directly related to, so you're seeing this erosion of public trust, but you're also seeing this decline in actual understanding. And so the more that you understand how this process works, like I do trust our government, mostly because I know how it works. I do trust, I mean, they're, again, not perfect, but there's, things come out in the wash, right? And like with things like, like the hate speech laws is a really good example of that, where I have an issue with, and e-safety, Online Safety Act, all of these types of laws, okay, which is that when you understand how it works and where it fits in sort of the bigger context, it is somewhat, there's areas that are unknown. So like with hate speech, it's not like, oh, it's law now, you go to jail for saying stuff. It doesn't work that way. What it does is it creates a permission structure for certain behaviours and consequences, and it clarifies expectations for, behaviour. And there's degrees that can be like a fine all the way up to jail. Like that's what the legal system is really just, again, depends on your view of it. But, the law enforces a sort of a social contract, and it is something that is constantly negotiated, constantly discussed, constantly reviewed, and it's an ongoing conversation, okay? And both literally and figuratively. And so with something like the hate speech, it creates, so passing something like that through Parliament, a statute is a guidebook on how to run things. It's not, laws are only as good as they're insofar as they're enforced. Okay, so first of all, a law is pointless if it's not enforced. Okay, it's effectively legal if it's not enforced. And you've got an appeal process, you've got review process, you've got access to due process. So in a criminal case, you've got, the burden of proof, which is extremely high. There's lots and lots of checks and balances in that. Now, if you understand the system, okay, you'll go, well, you come to so with the hate speech laws, part of the reason why I'm less concerned, and part of the reason why I think most people who do know the system are less concerned. They go, I've got concerns about how this can be misused. Absolutely correct. But I also know that, first of all, if you know the, unless you are, let me think. Why I'm okay with certain laws that might be problematic is because I know that it's somewhat self-correcting. But those who want to fuck around and find out, fuck around and find out. So if you're really desperate, and if you don't know and you're just sitting around if you really want to do hate speech, okay, chances are you're probably going to be let off, but it's going to be made very uncomfortable for you for a while, okay? So you might get a knock on the door, a fine, a warning, that sort of stuff, okay? So you get a knock on the door, a warning, whatever, okay? Some might get an arrest, some might, depending on how egregious it is, you might get a charge. But there's, if it's indictable for hate speech, then, or more egregious, then you could be a lot more uncomfortable. But there's a burden of proof before you get a conviction. They've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you committed it. And there's a whole bunch of criteria there. Also, you could appeal it. You could make a nuisance of yourself. So if you really feel strongly about hate speech laws, okay, the best way that you could be an activist outside of just being a cunt and just running and, if you're going to be really contrarian and you feel really strongly about like slurs and racist slurs and, various other things, okay? I really like hate speech. Hate speech is free speech. Guess what you should do? Do it. And you know what you should do? Cop the punishment. And you know what you should do? Appeal to the High Court. Get to the High Court. The High Court will go, hey, was it political expression? It's in conflict with this well-established principle of like freedom of political expression. Oh, okay. It's not hate speech. You win. Oh, might take you 10 years. But if you fucking care that much about it, do that. Stop moaning. But for the most part, I'm being glib, but I'm just saying, right? It's somewhat self-correcting. And if you're really worried about the risk of being arrested, guess what you do? Don't do hate speech, okay? Statutory guidelines, statutes, and all those things. They, again, ideally, okay. You've got your edge cases and things that fall through the cracks, but they generally, with time, end up orienting towards the right answer, the right whatever. Self-corrects. It just is how many years you can bear, really, I suppose. But if you feel strongly about it, do it. See how you go. For the most part, you get a fine. Okay? It's like if there's people who feel strongly about not voting, don't vote, cop the fine. No consequences for it. Okay? Other than just pay the fine. Okay? So just like do that then. If you feel really strongly about it, pay the fine. If you don't want to get vaccinated or don't want to vaccinate your kids, then you can't go to childcare. Okay, pay the price for it then. If you feel that strongly about it, you got to pay the price. But the way that like laws work is that you can is that they are something that is mostly agreed upon. Okay, through our representatives, as imperfect as it is. And you can nominate to be one of those representatives if you like. You could go to the party. There's the Labor Party in particular. I've decided to get more involved in that. But they have like specialist subcommittees for all of these things. Join those. Get a direct hand in policy. Get a direct say. It gets voted on at national conference by the members. But you didn't know that, did you? Okay, policy is determined by its members. So become a member. If you feel that strongly about it, work to get it overturned. You do have options, okay? But, these laws get passed. They are a guide for how to run things, okay? People consult with lawyers and lawyers go, yeah, well, this is legal, this is not legal, this is risky. This is, you shouldn't do this, but you can do this. This, you could try this, but this has risk. Okay? It's a book to consult on the rules and how to do things and how to, and if you want a different rule, you can change the rules, but you got to use the process to do it. Okay. That's how that's why I'm not worried about these things, because first of all, I don't do hate speech. And, things have a tendency, again, you just got to be willing to make, like, you may have noticed, like, I'm not mouthy over Israel for a reason, because they would destroy my life. Okay. Doesn't mean I don't care about the issue. It just means I just can't fight for that. You got to pick your battles, because I've got to choose whether I can be a lawyer or whether I can have an opinion on Palestine. I know that's the reality we have right now. That is where we sit. And do you think that's going to get any better because Elon Musk has taken over? Fuck no. It's yeah. Anyway, I have absolutely waffled for this one. But I just wanted to sort of show up and talk and get it out and see if there was anything. And I actually want to, do you know what I think? I think I'd prefer to have call-ins and guests and talk to people a bit more. I'd like to do more of that. I think that I get bored with me too. I'm more interested in sort of, it'd be nice to be a hub for community and conversation and And I'm better when I'm bouncing off other people too. Like, it's just, and I don't like reading. I don't like chat. Chats are annoying. I like it when people chat, but also it's just not a good medium. But I'd quite happily make it so that vetted. Although it would be fun to have an open, just here's the link, free for all every so often. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Do a like Taya Mego or something like that. Have just it's like that'd be actually quite fun, a bit of an experiment. But I it just I think it's okay. Let me bookend this thing. We've got to get back to basics. Some things it's so bad. We've got to get back to basics. It's really important that you just get clear on what democracy is. Because I am just so in love with my country, primarily because of its history and these beautiful, beautiful systems that people just take for granted. Australians have it way too good. We've had it too good for too long. We're so fucking complacent. And people just got so complacent about how good we've got it. And that could all be taken away. All people do is whinge and moan, and we fear what we don't understand. And I think that's a big explanation for why people don't trust the government. If people did know how government works and understood what good policy was, and could understand things that were like slightly more complex, Labor would win every single time. And you've got to understand that. If people were more informed about politics and about policy, Murdoch wouldn't have the power that he has. Okay, the coalition would be obliterated. Okay, Gina Reinhardt would be run out of town and laughed at. Okay, if it was more, if the world that these guys want. Gina Reinhardt wants to be, the queen. She sees herself as a monarch, right? I'm just trying to, sorry. I was thinking, no, I'm not going to say it. Sorry. That's a poorly formed joke. Another time. I'll talk about Gina another time. But she is literally the embodiment of what an Australian monarch would look like. An absolute ignorant bogan with too much money, who claims to own everything in the dirt, and that it's only by grace, her grace of her presence, that you're fortunate enough to have a house. That's how she sees us. Okay, they're very much on the Trump train and the Project 2025 stuff. Like, I've been getting like Australian Doge ads. And a lot, like, it's quite serious. Okay, they want to do, and I America can do what it wants, but they're not fucking coming for my country, not on my watch anyway. Not that I got any power, but but people just need to learn. I don't know. Your trust in government will go up if you learn how government works. You will feel a lot less fearful. You will feel better if you actually just spend some time and engage. Look, I will personally buy you a civics textbook, okay? It is I haven't got it anymore. I got rid of it when I moved to Sydney, but I held on to it because it was my, in year 12, because I repeated year 12, believe it or not, because I was ill. And it's called Conflict and Consensus. Quentin Beresford and Harry, my professors from ECU, wrote that book. It's a high school politics book, and I love that book. There's another book about the history of Western Australia, another dog-eared thing. Okay, engage with just high school level books. I would love to write. Actually, maybe I should. I'll try. Maybe I should find one and recommend one. Okay, or maybe even write one. Good luck. Another project. Yes, let's have another project, Taya. You don't have enough to do. But no, try and find a good book that, please just engage and get yourself educated, because I can guarantee you that something that is somewhat protective, which is that when you know how the system works, you are more likely to trust it because it is magnificent. It's something that has evolved over time. Our political systems are as beautiful as the Darwinian evolution. Now, if you believe in neither of those, I can't help you. But if you believe in evolution, then you know, at least you can see the absolute beauty in nature. Okay, the same thing applies to political systems. They evolve over time. Like you have your odd mutations and various other things. And America is an optimistic mutation that has sort of gone awry with time. But we try again. Try again, and we just keep getting back up and fighting for democracy. But you need to agree that democracy is the goal. That's like the one thing that we need to agree on, because this democracy that the fascists are selling you, it doesn't exist. But in order for you to fully grasp and understand, this is why I thought it was because people didn't understand what fascism was, but it's because people don't understand what you lose, because they don't understand what democracy means. And we kind of got it a bit backwards in that regard, where I thought it was just because people didn't know what fascism was. It's because they don't know what democracy is about, which, that's its own challenge. Anyway, I am fading big time. I don't think there's any clips here, but, I always think they're worse than they were, but I know when it wasn't a great one. This one's mid, waffly, but I'm going to try and set it up. Actually, I might do that this afternoon. Make it a priority. I'll set it up so that people can call in and chat, and we can, whatever. See, and we'll do more of a call-in interactive thing. I can still talk for hours if no one shows up, because, whatever. And obviously I need to set some boundaries and rules around that, because people are just, people, if you've ever listened to Spaces, you need to at least be anchored in fucking reality or something. But for the most part, let's just see how we go. Anyway, I'm going to go. I love you. Take care. Thank you for your precious life seconds. I'm going to try and write what I meant, because I actually wrote an essay for this stream. You wouldn't think it, would you? And I didn't get to it. I just waffled for fucking 2 hours. But anyway, whatever. I love you. Take care. Bye.